Hi guys, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Monthly Tech Show. We're going to jump straight into the news here, and without further ado, let's go for it.
So we start this week, as we do like to, with a hack, specifically the Yahoo one that happened back in 2014, where 500 million user accounts had their details breached. I think it included things like passwords, which admittedly the data is now 2 years old, but Andrew, I think we all know why this is so scary for most people.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing for me is that, as usual, and as the Quartz article that we're going to link to in the comments down below mentions, the Cambridge University security group says that password reuse is as high as 49%. So almost half of people, like all people, reuse at least one password on multiple sites. So if you're not at all familiar, and you really should be at this point, if you reuse a password, that means if one account, say your Yahoo account, even if you think, oh, I haven't used that for a few years, if you're still using the same password on your Yahoo account as your Hotmail or your Gmail or anything important, then it's very easy to go, well, is it the same sort of email address? Is it the same password? Oh, look, I'm into their account. So that's the main thing. And the kind of even more worrying thing, and similar to the 50 million or something, or 100 million accounts that Dropbox had leaked, this is actually quite an old hack. This data has been available since 2014, or at least it was actually breached in 2014. So theoretically, the last couple years of people signing up and that sort of thing should be safe, but at the same time, you should probably still change your passwords and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think perhaps the more scary thing is not people specifically targeting your account, it's the algorithms that they are building using all of this data. 500 million is a huge data set that they can aggregate from, and they can work out what are the most common passwords and the most common variants of things that people are doing, and essentially they can build these brute force tools that can play through like the top 1,000 passwords in a couple of minutes. And if yours is on that list, which chances are it actually might be, then you might be screwed, just because of all of these tools that people are able to build from these databases traded on the darknet. They're ones that actually the big corporations use to make sure their users aren't using insecure passwords, so they say you can't use that password, and the ones that they are basically using the darks, so it's basically being used for the light side and the dark side. The light side is corporations using it to make you safer, and the dark side is people trying to get access to your account and ultimately make money off of you or extort you for money, as we know people like to do.
So next up, in a rather interesting turn of events, an open source GitHub project which was looking to basically test DNS servers found that a North Korean DNS server was basically badly configured so that everyone can, or anyone from the outside world can actually access North Korea's effectively intranet. But anyway, basically there's only 28 websites, which, as the top commenter on the Reddit post that we'll link to mentioned, there's actually 83 websites in GTA 5 that are fully functional, which means that an entire country with literally like millions of people inhabiting it has less websites available.
I had a look at some of them. I think it was the BBC summary of it, which they did a little while ago when it first leaked. And it was just the interesting things that they were sort of showing. There were things like recipe websites. There was like a film website, so you could sign up and they were like celebrating a film festival on there. And it was sort of there's like a group of people who are sort of really fascinated about North Korea and the stuff that we don't actually know about it, and they have sort of leapt on this and used this to sort of get a wider glimpse into life. Obviously, I think this is just the stuff that's available on the internet, and most people believe there is an intranet that is only in North Korea that has hundreds more websites. So this looks like only a couple of public websites, and there is a far wider one beneath. Obviously, we don't know because we're not in North Korea. We're not North Koreans, but yeah, it's interesting to say the least, for such a secretive country that I think everyone's really wondering about and curious about, and that you can actually go on holiday to if you're brave enough, because they do like guided tours around the place. But yeah, it's one of those mysteries, and I guess as they become more and more technologically advanced, because there was a story a little while that they had their own version of Netflix that would offer them access, like North Korean TV shows, and they show the little box and the little demonstration there of them using it.
One of the other things that I found interesting was actually some of the types of websites that are there. So there was something like friends.com.kp, which seemed to be some sort of very disused version of Facebook. And then there was, as you say, there was like culinary websites, but also there was an insurance website, a flight ticket website, which seems weird because I don't think they're allowed to even leave their homes, let alone the country. It's just for the fact that so little people have access to the internet as well. I think there's only like certain internet stations which you have like supervised 2 minutes time with or something like that, something crazy. It seems very weird that they even have any websites because of the just sheer lack of computers and internet access. But at the same time, I'm gonna have to look up that Netflix for North Korea website. Oh, Manbang, that was it. It was called Manbang. That was...
Get yourself some Korean Netflix and chill. So next up, we're going back to one of our favourite topics here at TechteamGB, net neutrality, and how the FCC is arguing about it with the ISPs. The latest quote, I think I'm going to read the quote in full if you'll wait just a sec. Imagine you are out for a walk and experience a sudden irresistible craving for Oreo cookies. You only want to spend $2, which means you're able to buy a 2-pack or maybe even a 4-pack. But for sure you cannot get the family size of over 40 cookies. For that many, you have to spend more. Of course, it would be nice if your $2 bought you the right to eat an unlimited number of cookies, but you know that is not the way our economy works.
I literally can't even.
Andrew.
It's such a stupid thought. I mean, I think the main thing is that with a lot of government officials and that sort of thing, they're not necessarily technically minded. We've seen this with time and time again with stupid quotes from saying we'll ban the internet and just things like that. But the thing is that I think either the ISPs are really that stupid that they don't understand how their own networks work, and therefore, the fact that, comparing a physical product to packets of, electrons moving down a wire, is not the same thing. Yes, if you're trying to buy some Oreos, that is exactly how the Western economy works. That is how we purchase, we trade things for a certain value, they price them and whatever. But the thing with digital packets of data that are flowing through wires is that it costs them nothing. They are billed so they have their own network, obviously, which is generally the last mile kind of infrastructure. But especially in America, they're basically tier 1 providers where I can't remember, there's level 3 Cogent and another one that I can't remember, but basically they're the ones that own the internet backbone lines, and someone like Comcast or Time Warner or whoever else will be billed on what's called the 95th percentile, so they will be billed on 95% of the time they are using this much bandwidth, therefore they are charged the entire year or quarter or whatever for using that much bandwidth. So it makes absolutely no difference to them whether you use 4 gigabytes or 40 gigabytes or 400 gigabytes, especially if it's at a fixed rate or a fixed speed, because that's what they're effectively being billed on. So the idea that you can basically bill people more, effectively double dip into someone's pocket to say, yes, well, you have downloaded, X number of videos, therefore that means you have to pay us X number more money, is just ridiculous, because you're paying for a service and you expect to get that service. If you want to compare it to physical products, it's like if you bought a packet of Oreo cookies and then you ate all of the Oreo cookies that were in the packet, and then the person who, the Walmart or whatever, came to your house and said, we'd like some of those cookies back, you can't exactly just barf them back up and give them to... You paid for that thing, you should get that thing, not be billed more for having the thing that you bought. So, yeah, it's stupid.
Yeah, it's an odd one where you look at things where you're conventionally billed for by your usage, so water or electricity, for example. Those are things that they're not really tangible and you're going to use it. But the thing is, there are firm, tried and tested ways of measuring them that have been developed, that have been regulated, that have been standardized The meters in your home will be checked. They say you can't tamper with it, don't tamper with it. It is set up in a way that everyone trusts and believes to be true. The same cannot be said of the way that they're regulating and monitoring the amount of data you're using. There is no way of telling how it's accurate. There's no way to easily dispute it. And there is no wide regulation in place, or no plans to widely regulate it if they were to be able to charge in the sort of tiering system for it. And you look at things, you look at the other ones like fuel. No, I think that's probably a bad analogy. But you just look at all these things, and it's just them trying to make more money off of what isn't going to cost them any extra. Because where with fuel, it's going to cost them more to give you more fuel. It's not going to cost them more to give you more internet, and potentially the same could be said about electricity, but then there's the cost of generation. There are a lot more hard costs to pumping water and generating electricity versus the internet, where the cost of sending you extra bits is negligible. There is the amount of electricity it takes to send that to you is very, very small. These are not, powerful signals or using lots of current.
It's to make it clear, the company that actually sent this filing to the FCC was a company called Mediacom, which apparently has 1.1 million subscribers across the United States. Which, by the way, if any of you 1.1 million subscribers have a choice of leaving Mediacom, please do make sure that you hurt their wallet, because this is so stupid, and they really ought to start thinking about it. But the other thing is that I just noticed that the senior VP and General Counsel, Joseph Young, said you have to pay extra for double stuff. Yes, that's because there is actually extra stuff in there. When you're talking about double stuff in an internet package, there's nothing different besides your ability to download more data, but it's still at the same speed, which is what you are being billed on. So,
yeah. To be devil's advocate, I can see the argument they're using there is to sort of bring the balance in. The argument is it's where they place the value. Like, for example, this phone will cost $200 to make. It certainly does not cost $200. It doesn't cost $200. It costs $700, or however much it would be in dollars. So it is where they're placing the value, and they're saying the value is in the service they're providing, and the more you use that service, the more value you're getting.
Which is stupid.
No, stop it. Tim Berners-Lee made the internet to be a free platform that everyone can use. And obviously the ISPs arose because there is no free infrastructure. The infrastructure has to be paid for somehow. But, just paying the monthly fee, you don't need that extra money. Bugger off.
This week at Samsung's SSD Global Summit, they introduced two of the most highly anticipated SSDs of the year. And the main thing, the kind of big grabbing headline that seems to have kind of come out of it, is that they expect 512GB SSDs to be the same price or price parity as 1TB hard drives in 2020, or apparently 236% PCIe SSD growth as well. So that's the NVMe type drives that you might plug into an M.2 slot, or perhaps actually, a PCIe direct link. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. Phil, what do you think?
Technology moves fast. We've known this for ages. Admittedly, processors, we are pushing the envelope there, and that is where the majority of development has been focused, and that is where we're starting to hit a wall. But all these other areas, which are, SSDs, you look at it even 5 years ago. So you can't have an SSD in your computer. They don't last. They got 2 years. You can only store 32 gigs on them, and they cost way too much. And now, if you don't have an SSD in your computer, what are you thinking? What are you doing? What are you wasting your money on that means you can't have an SSD in your computer?
One of the interesting things was, obviously, as an Amazon affiliate, I can see what people are buying with my links. And there's been a lot of sales of the Samsung 850 EVO 500GB drives recently. And I was looking at the price of them. And in the UK, I think they're £130 or £134 or something for a 500GB SSD. And to give context to that, and why I'm kind of surprised, is when I bought my first SSD, which is the OCC Vertex 4, which was actually quite a contested SSD at the time. That was over £100. I think it was something like £120 or £130 for a 128GB SSD, and that was 3, maybe 4 years ago. So in 3 or 4 years, we've the price has dropped massively, dramatically, making it, as Phil says, a lot more accessible to people, and you really have to be on a kind of tight budget for a system if you're not planning on shoving an SSD in there. So yeah, it's pretty awesome and nice to see some growth and faster storage coming along.
Yeah, for even more bizarre context to put that in, I remember on one of my first computers when I was about 7 or 8, and the 20 gig hard drive on it died, and my dad and I went out to Staples, and we couldn't get the 120 gig hard drive because it was £100.
Ouch.
So we had to go for the 80 gig for £60, and that was within the past decade. So, you know, to give you some more context, the storage price is going to go down, and inevitably there will be something beyond SSD. There will be some even greater technology we can't even think about yet because it's so out there and bizarre, and that's going to come in and be more expensive but better. And, you know, it is about becoming the norm. It is about these SSDs becoming more reliable and, you know, faster. Everything's getting better. Technology and society is progressing.
So a slightly more interesting article in the sense is that Google's self-driving car was in quite a serious overall collision recently, and that is actually wasn't its fault. What they call a commercial van, but I think you can see it in the background of one of the pictures. Basically, straight up T-boned the car, the self-driving Lexus SUV that was driving through an intersection, as you Americans call it. And got properly hit pretty hard. And the main thing is that everyone that was involved is still okay, which is awesome, but the car is pretty dinged up. But for me, the most interesting thing is that the self-driving cars in general, I believe, have only been in a handful of accidents in total. They've driven several million miles at this point, if I remember rightly, and they have, just had a ridiculously low, safety record. And I think there's only been one or maybe two accidents that have been at fault. Whereas if you think about how many people are driving on the road, just actual people driving cars, how many have accidents on a regular basis, that's just really impressive and pretty awesome.
Yeah, you look at it and a lot of the accidents it says has been caused by when it's moving too slowly or it's stationary, it was rear-ended by a stupid driver. And it is where you're getting the balance of it's being too cautious so other people are having accidents with it, and then in this instance a driver ran a red light. So the self-driving car should have been more cautious, even though there's no way for it to foresee that another driver is going to run a red light unless it has, long-distance radar, foreseeing these things happening. Or it's about getting all of these cars self-driving. CGP Grey made a really interesting video about how to stop traffic jams, and it's how human drivers don't all accelerate at a consistent rate, because if all cars accelerated and stopped at a consistent rate, it would be continuous, like, a snake moving along. But it's because people stop and start at different speeds and speed up at different speeds. That's what causes traffic jams. And CGP Grey's answer, self-driving cars, who are all connected and can talk to each other and can say when they're stopping, when they're going. And then we won't have accidents like this. Get rid of the people.
Yeah, for me, the main point is that right now, a lot of the cars, especially Google's one, I think Ford now has some fairly advanced self-driving cars and that sort of thing. All of these cars aren't quite connected as such. I think perhaps Google's cars might be able to talk to Google's cars, and Ford's cars might be able to talk to Ford's cars. But I don't think that there's any sort of open source API that actually allows them to effectively communicate with each other well. And I think that would be something that would be really successful if we could do it at the moment. It's something that I would personally love to do, but just don't have the skills or intelligence at the moment to actually do that sort of thing. But I think it'd be really fantastic if we could get an open source API that all of the manufacturers can adopt, so that we can actually have a decent communication protocol between them, which means that, as Phil was talking about the CGP Grey video, traffic would not exist. You wouldn't need to have stoplights or anything like that, or stop signs. You would just be able to have a constant flow of traffic, kind of like in films you see stuff like Minority Report and that sort of thing, where you just see these cars floating along, dodging in between each other. It's really cool. I look forward to having less accidents, but there's also a part of me that does love driving, so there's likely still going to be a large amount of people that still choose to drive, which is going to be interesting.
And finally, in the past week, as I'm sure many of you will have heard about, the iPhone 7 has been launched with no headphone jack. You've got an adapter for it, but you can't charge while listening through the headphones, so you can buy the Belkin thing, which has 2 lightning ports so you can listen and charge. And it's all just a bit ridiculous, really. There's uproar from some people and other people rejoicing that Apple are again pushing the envelope on the new technology, moving into the 21st century with the 3.5mm jack, which has been around for absolutely ages, since like Walkman days, I think, if probably even before that. And they are pushing into wireless and, if you really want to, Lightning offerings. Whilst obviously there are no Lightning offerings at the moment, besides I think 1 or 2 third-party pairs, I think we're going to see more of them with the iPhone 7 gaining traction, gaining prevalence in the mobile phone market. And wireless ones, I also think, are going to be kicking off. They are getting there, the battery lives are getting longer, the reliability, the quality of Bluetooth is getting better. So I think this is just Apple being Apple, really, ditching something, generating a lot of storm over it, and it's ultimately not going to pay out. So whilst the 3.5mm deal breaker means I'm going to be sticking with my 6S for the foreseeable future, it is probably the right way to go.
That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to subscribe if you did, and feel free to share the video if you found it was interesting, as chatting about all the different bits and pieces. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.